In this episode of Nitro Analysis, we will be covering jet balance and discussing why jets do not fit well into Battlefield 3's current gameplay dynamics. With the exception of the jet, every vehicle in the game can be reliably destroyed by something other than itself. This presents an enormous balance issue. The only time a jet pilot can be destroyed by a non-jet attack is when the jet pilot makes a large, easily avoidable mistake. This might not be such a terrible thing if jets weren't so effective against literally everything in the game. Jets are by far the best vehicles for attacking air targets, they are capable of combating vehicles, and they are also extremely capable of destroying infantry. They can achieve all this without fearing anything but another jet pilot. It is for this reason that the best jet pilot in a given server is almost invulnerable. There are 4 types of pilotable air vehicles in BF3. These vehicles are jets, attack helicopters, scout helicopters, and transport helicopters. For simplicity, this analysis will exclude scout helicopters and transport helicopters because they may contain engineers which provide in-flight repairs. This makes them very dissimilar to attack helicopters and jets in terms of their defensive capabilities. Anti-aircraft weapon effectiveness comparisons will therefore be made between attack helicopters and jets only. BF3 contains many ground-based weapons which are capable of attacking air targets. These weapons are the Igla, Stinger, Mobile AA, 50 cal, and laser-compatible weapons. However, none of these weapons are particularly capable against jets. Contrastingly, many of these weapons are worth using against helicopters. The limited range of Iglas and Stingers precludes them from even locking a jet in most circumstances. In the event that a lock is actually achieved, and the weapon is able to fire, a jet's flares counter the attack quite easily. By the time the flare's missile distracting capability wears off, the jet is well out of range for a potential second attack. In the case of attack helicopters, however, their comparatively low speed makes it at least possible to attack twice. However, the second attack is sometimes countered by the gunner's countermeasures, making this weapon fairly useless against helicopters as well. The real effect of the Stinger and Igla is that its presence encourages the attack helicopter to remain low to the ground in order to take advantage of its below radar capability. This leaves it vulnerable to other attacks like the tank's main cannon, canister shot, or a SMA or RPG-7. This low positioning not only makes it more vulnerable, but it also reduces the attack helicopter's line of sight, which decreases its number of potential targets and thus its effectiveness in combat. While the Igla and Stinger are fairly ineffective against both of these air vehicle targets, they actually do have a tangible effect when used against attack helicopters. The same cannot be said for jets. When faced with a Stinger or Igla, jets simply go about their business as normal. Either the small locking range prevents the Igla or Stinger from even attacking at all, or the jet's countermeasures easily deal with the incoming missile. The only time an Igla or Stinger poses a threat to a jet is when it is already preoccupied by another jet pilot of a similar skill level. In this case, the missile's damage potential can force a jet pilot to break away from its dogfight, putting it in a position which is significantly disadvantageous. This situation requires at least 2 players for the Igla and Stinger to have any effect at all. This is different from the Igla and Stinger's effectiveness versus helicopters, which is present with just a single player alone. I would like to note that even though the Igla and Stinger are mostly ineffective, I would be very hesitant to give them a buff. This is because they do not require skill to use. For the sake of gameplay, a skillless weapon should never rise above the level of a deterrent. If possible, it may be reasonable to increase the range of the Igla and Stinger versus jets only. Such a change would not disrupt their current balance versus helicopters. Of all of the ground-based anti-aircraft weapons in Battlefield 3, the Mobile AA is the best at dealing respectable amounts of damage to jets. Like all forms of AA in BF3, however, it is also more effective versus helicopters than it is versus jets, due to their comparatively low speed. The jet's high speed makes it very difficult to hit with the Mobile AA in many situations. To get consistent damage, it is necessary for the jet pilot to be traveling in a relatively straight line in a relatively close proximity to the Mobile AA. Beyond this condition, it becomes significantly more difficult to inflict any damage at all, given the amount the driver must lead the jet target. Whether or not these conditions are met is ultimately up to the jet pilot, and not the driver of the AA. The jet's high maneuverability and speed make it the dictator of its engagements. If it doesn't want to fly in an area, it won't. The only time a jet will put itself in danger of taking AA fire is when it is not aware of the AA's location. The mobile AA can be effective when its location is unknown. However, an unaware opponent does not constitute a solid basis for balance. This is because every weapon performs significantly better in such a situation. The element of surprise exists for pretty much everything in the game. Just because the mobile AA is the best form of ground-based AA in the game does not mean that it's actually particularly effective versus jets. A jet can and will disable and ultimately destroy a mobile AA at surprisingly long ranges. Even if the mobile AA was a respectable combatant for jets, which it isn't, it would still not qualify as a viable counter. This is due to its sporadic existence in various game modes and maps. This graphic displays each combination of map and game mode where jets can be flown. The mobile AA can only be found on the combinations highlighted in blue. As you can see, the jet is available on 14 combinations of maps and modes. The mobile AA is only present on 5 of these combinations. This is sometimes very strange, given that some of these combinations contain the same number of air vehicles whether or not the mobile AA is available. Caspian Border, for instance, contains 3 air vehicles on both its Conquest and Conquest Large modes. Why should the number of air vehicle counters change when the number of air vehicles does not? It is for this reason that giving any kind of buff to the mobile AA would do very little to change the jet's dominance. Balance may become acceptable on some maps and game modes, but it would remain unbalanced on others where the mobile AA simply isn't present. The 50 caliber machine gun is technically capable of attacking jets with a fair degree of reliability and, unlike the mobile AA, is available on all modes. Its damage is very, very low, however. The 50 cal does anywhere from 1 to 4 damage per shot to jets, and 1 to 4 damage per shot to helicopters. The frequency of the damages varies depending on the target. Higher damages are more frequent on jets than they are on helicopters, making helicopters slightly more survivable when under the constant fire of a 50 cal. Ultimately, the 50 caliber machine gun is not a viable option for destroying either air target, but given that helicopters travel more slowly than jets, and they take a very similar amount of damage per shot, the 50 cal is more effective versus helicopters than it is versus jets. If you're looking for an unreliable anti-aircraft weapon, look no further than laser-compatible weapons. I know we did an entire episode on this subject, and I thought we had it pretty well figured out, but there have been a few changes made to laser-compatible weapons since the making of that video. Namely, that flares can break laser locks. This change seems to enable flares to, sometimes, distract incoming laser-compatible weapons. And honestly, I can't figure it out. Sometimes flares work, and sometimes they don't. I'm not even sure if I like flares having this ability in the first place. But the bottom line is that an unreliable weapon is not an effective weapon, nor does it qualify as a well-implemented weapon. Weapons and countermeasures should work or not work. Anything in between causes ineffectiveness, an artificially low skill ceiling, and frustration. The jet's high speed makes its vulnerability to this weapon type fairly brief. It will enter and exit the laser targeter's range quickly, making its susceptibility to attack significantly lower when compared to helicopters.
It hit him. It hit him. Gone. Fire. There's a jet. Locked. Got him. I didn't get any points for the
Be advised, I spotted a hostile jet. Over.
locked.
Chopper coming in on you. Or, Niles. Or just this zone, never mind.
Oh, sorry, it's the coast. Target locked.
We have taken
He
the
blew flares
objective.
and I lost the lock. Locked. Fired.
I have a. The objective has been neutralized.
Lane and...
Because literally every anti-aircraft weapon in the game is more adept at destroying helicopters than it is at destroying jets, I think it's pretty clear that any buffs made to anti-aircraft weapons must be applied in a way to affect jets specifically. Any buffs which increase an anti-aircraft weapon's overall effectiveness would adversely affect helicopters, which, I believe, are in a far better state of balance than jets are. This is even more evident when you consider that helicopters are not only vulnerable to every anti-aircraft weapon in the game, but they are also unreasonably vulnerable to jets. A jet can kill a helicopter in a single pass, from above, where the helicopter had no opportunity to avoid or combat the threat. There is no simple solution to this problem, but I believe that applying significant damage reductions to the jet's weapons would be a huge step in the right direction. Jets are just too good at everything. If possible, it may also be reasonable to increase the locking range of various weapons versus jets specifically, and make the mobile AA available on more maps where appropriate. Oh, and jet physics are bad. Really bad. Jets can fly at insanely low speeds. They can also occasionally hit objects without being destroyed.